Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
This is Julie Teeling here with Life Improvement Radio with Roy Peter Clark. We're going to talk about his book, Help for Writers. So we are here to talk about what's the purpose of your book?
I think a lot of people would like to write, but they have many inhibitions. I want to demystify the writing process so more people feel comfortable with trying it out. We say we live in a democracy. We say we believe in freedom of expression. But what good is freedom of expression if you lack the means to express yourself? So my job in the 3 books I've done for Little Brown, Writing Tools, The Glamour of Grammar, and now Help for Writers, with an exclamation point after help for writers, is to say the First Amendment, it belongs to you. It doesn't just belong to professionals. Try it out. Everybody thinks that you should be able to read. So why should writing be a power that only a few people possess in the culture?
Yeah, because I would think that people would be frightened of how to even start a book. I mean, maybe you have all these thoughts in your heads and have all these things that you want to get out there and get people to know. I mean, like you were saying, the freedom of speech. But do you help the people who are reading to even just do the baby steps or even just the structure?
Yeah, I think of it as a process. Play the piano. I learned the process. I play the guitar. I learned the process. I don't dance very well because I can't really learn the steps. But there are steps in writing. And I'm not just talking about becoming a book author. I'm talking about writing every day. I'm talking about writing on a blog. I'm talking about keeping a journal. I'm talking about if perhaps you're a grandparent writing your life story for your grandchildren. I'm talking about all the writing that many people have to do as part of their jobs, writing reports. How do you make something clear? How do you make something interesting? And then, hopefully, how do you make something compelling? And all of my books, which really reflect my experience as both a writer and a teacher, is not to nag anybody, not to emphasize the negative, but to encourage people to immerse themselves in the English language, to find a way to express themselves, to read, to write, and to talk like we're talking now about reading and writing.
It's lost. People they're making different and new types of texting and everything. The language is changing, and it's almost lost. I mean, they're talking about getting rid of cursive and just, I do believe that the written word is important to teach and make sure people really know, because we don't want to lose that form of communication, because there's different types of learning, and if you lose that, you lose so much what our foundations are based on.
Yeah, having done these 3 books, I'm at work on a 4th book, and it's called How to Write Short and Why. And part of what I'm trying to do is to take contemporary forms of short writing like Facebook, Twitter, text messages, blog posts, and build a bridge between many, many older forms, actually ancient forms of short writing. The very first writers in probably the year 3000 BC in Sumeria were carving in cuneiform alphabet on clay tablets. And if you look at the pictures of these things, some of which survive, you see they look exactly like iPads and iPhones.
The true tablet.
The true tablet. It's pretty arrogant to think that Steve Jobs invented the tablet. I think God invented the tablet maybe on Mount Sinai when he gave the 10 Commandments.
That's true. That is a really, the time difference is insane.
So, yeah, before there was Twitter, there was the telegram. People used to write letters in longhand. There are many forms of short writing. The haiku is an ancient Japanese poetic form that is only 3 lines long and is limited to 17 syllables. Shakespeare wrote about 35 plays, about half of which are masterpieces. But he's also famous for writing about 150 or so sonnets, which are only 14 lines long. I don't sort of carry with me kind of like the myth of the Golden Age, like there was a time in the past when students were really smart and they knew how to spell. You know, all you got to do is look at my yearbook to find out that my high school yearbook that was a myth.
I have to say that I am a spell check fiend because I don't do it on my own, luckily.
Yeah, today I'm in Miami, I'm wearing my Hawaiian shirt, right?
Yes.
But if I were going to the prom, I'd be wearing my tuxedo. So sometimes we express ourselves in very formal ways, using the most correct and conventional forms of language. But sometimes we're communicating in very informal ways and for a different audience, and it's okay to, quote, break the rules, because they're not really rules. Ultimately, they're tools that help us express ourselves.
To be able to know your audience is so important, to be able to communicate your message. So I like that you said that you are flexible in the way that you want to teach people and get your message out.
Mm-hmm. Let me put it this way. There's a sort of cliche that teachers use, which is that I learn more from my students than they learn from me. Usually that's not true, but sometimes it is. And one of the times that it is when you're trying to help somebody else write about a tragedy in their lives or a difficult challenge they're facing or an amazing person that they met. Because you as a teacher, I'm not an expert on those topics. You are the expert. It's your grandfather, It was your botched wedding ceremony or whatever. Right. And so my job is to create an environment in which you feel confident that you can express yourself in the most interesting and powerful way.
Yeah, because it's almost like cathartic, where you can have all of these things. People have a dynamic being, and then this way you're letting them and teaching them how to express it, so it is documented for their life and beyond.
My first book, which was written in the 1980s, it was called Free to Write, and it was about my experience of visiting my daughter's elementary schools and teaching 9 and 10 and 11-year-olds to write. Some of the most powerful stories I've ever written were written by those children. A lot of those children didn't know they couldn't write because no one had even given them a chance. It's been interesting to see, that was back in the mid-'80s, and I still stay in touch with some of those former 10-year-olds who are now almost 40. One of them covered the presidential campaign of the second George Bush for the Los Angeles Times. One of them was the African correspondent for the Washington Post. So they found something very early because I went into that classroom and I told them I was interested in them and what they had to say. They embraced that and they used it to really feel this power within them, change their lives.
That is so wonderful, because there's teachers out there who really just, and not at their own fault, they just get so jaded, and you lose kids real quick. If you get one bad teacher to guide them in the wrong way, to just really get a bad taste in their mouth for reading, writing, it affects them for the long haul. So that's great.
What I'm about to say isn't as common as it used to be, but back in the day, if we screwed up in school, our punishment was to write something. No one ever told us draw a picture or play something on the piano. If you were bad, you had to write. So that the association of writing and punishment was so powerful that it was something you wanted to avoid. Freud would call that aversive conditioning. You're conditioned to associate this experience with punishment and pain. In my classes, writing is a reward, not a punishment. It's a celebration. It's something to be proud and confident about.
And I think that is very important, because kids have to, in some schools, use writing as a punishment. Yeah, and they're going to associate it with something that is negative. So why would you want to do something you have to do related to something negative? So I think this is great. Is there anything that you want to tell those writers that are really just too afraid to try? What kind of take-homes would you give them to just get started?
People ask me, Roy, you've been productive in the last 5 years. You've published 3 successful books on writing and language. How did you do that? And I said, well, I followed the advice of one of my teachers who told me, page a day equals a book a year. Hardly anyone writes a book a year. That's like tremendously productive. Yeah. Perhaps some mystery authors, they're cranking them out. Right. But when you recognize that you don't have to have this special magical power, that you just take a notebook. You don't even have to write for anybody else but yourself. And you don't have to give yourself lots of time. Instead of playing that video game for the 3,000th time, sit down and open your notebook and sit down and write something about something that means something to you. Eventually, you may get the need or you'll feel the courage to want to share it, beyond your own eyes and ears. To be a literate person in any culture just means that you're reading every day and you're writing regularly. And you reach the point that you're doing what we're doing now, which is talking about reading and writing.
Right. Mm-hmm. I want to thank you. I think this is a great topic and a great book idea, really, because I do believe that we are lacking that in our society at this time. And I imagine taking one day at a time and just writing something every day, it gets easier with practice. Most things do. I am speaking with Roy Peter Clark, and his book is Help for Writers! ! And if you want to learn how to write and just get better at communicating all around, I think his book would be great. You are listening to Julie Teeling at Life Improvement Radio. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.